the nature of consciousness, the nature of awareness is light, and the nature of awareness is also sound. So this prakasha and vimarsha here, that relationship of Shiva Shakti here is exemplified by that luminosity and the power of self-reflection. So the whole world here, made of varying degrees of vibrations, of sound, crystallized and compacted to the level of perception where it appears solid. All is nothing other than the shimmering ocean of sound. And all that is illumined by the light of awareness. And finally, we have a question on the relationship between sound, light, and Kundalini. A little background. After receiving Shaktipat from Guru Maya Chidvilasananda in the 90s, I meditated deeply for a decade or more. Guru Maya's instruction, as I understood, it was to uproot our negative tendencies one by one, and I set out to do that. It was hard, as I had to face some very difficult memories from early childhood that brought me to my knees. I immersed myself in body work, chanting, meditating, yoga asana, singing, dancing, and more to survive and to make sense of all this. Now, I work with people using these modalities and I love what I do. I feel like the phoenix. I still study currently Ayurveda and somatic experiencing, which together have helped me feel more comfortable in my body. I appreciate your videos on YouTube. They have been so helpful in steadying my ship. I feel I'm ready to start meditating again, now strong enough to surrender in a way that I was not able before. Questions. As I prepare to deepen again into meditation, how do light and sound relate to each other? I know that the body and the material world are created from sound. In what portion are we also light? Are light and sound opposing forces? Are they both expressions of Kundalini, or does the Kundalini move through them? I sense the question relates to my wanting to understand the structure of the universe around me as I dive into the unknown again. Well, first of all, light and sound are not opposing forces at all. For example, there are whole philosophical systems and traditions that speak of that and speak of that relationship. The aforementioned one, in response to one of the previous questions, was, for example, me mentioning Surat Shabd Yoga, literally translated as yoga of sound and light. Right? Surat, light, and Shabd, sound. So there are many other traditions that speak to that. Of course, Tantric Shaivism is perhaps most notorious with regard to this concept of light and sound, which, although spoken of as a concept, or remains a concept until this becomes one's lived reality, until that what first was entertained and reflected upon as a concept becomes the reality of one's direct cognition. So, how does light and sound relate to each other? There is this foundational understanding in Tantra of the relationship between awareness as light or luminosity and the power of being aware of itself as that self-reflection. In Sanskrit, exemplified by the terms prakasha and vimarsha. The tantric teaching of any kind of tantra proceeds from that cornerstone understanding of relationship between prakasha and vimarsha. So we can speak about it in these terms. What is primary here? You see, it could be a chicken and egg story. Let me just turn off the Siri. We could speak of it as a chicken and egg story. What's first, light or sound? In some traditions, it is spoken of as sound that gives birth to absolutely everything. Everything. Every nomina and every phenomena. So at the base of it all is that primordial sound, that logos, that pranav, that om, right? That at the beginning there was a word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, right? That biblical. Because translated into English, it has very, very heavy and kind of almost literal connotations. But if we are equipped with that more synthesized understanding, then perhaps that Om, that what it stands for here, truly represents the same what the Bible speaks of, but in a more direct way, perhaps, unless we maybe make attempts to translate Bible in a more kind of accurate way that what it represents, right? At the beginning there was this primordial vibration, and that primordial vibration came from the one and only, and it was the name of one and only, right? It was basically having its own name to itself. Something along these lines. So that standpoint places the emphasis on the primacy on sound. But there are other perspectives where light is what generates everything. Light is what gives rise to everything, because the nature of consciousness, the nature of awareness is luminous, light. But perhaps to have this as an understanding that there is no possibility to separate light from sound, in a sense that they come and give birth to each other. Because the light, the nature of consciousness, the nature of awareness is light, and the nature of awareness is also sound. So this prakasha and vimarsha here, that relationship of Shiva Shakti here, is exemplified by that luminosity and the power of self-reflection. So the whole world here, made of varying degrees of vibrations, of sound, crystallized and compacted to the level of perception where it appears solid. All is nothing other than the shimmering ocean of sound. And all that is illumined by the light of awareness. So this is the relationship between the light and sound. And Kundalini, of course, here, if you are aware of how we speak about it, then Kundalini here is also both light and sound. And that's why the awakening of Kundalini, the somatic even experiences of Kundalini, and the internal, both classical and clinical accounts of Kundalini process are replete with accounts of these experiences of light and sound. That whole nad yoga, the whole yoga of unabstract sound, the yoga of various progressively subtler degrees of sound, all the way to the sound of that humming of the pranav. And light here is that luminosity that is the very, very essence of our awareness that illumines everything. So therefore I would suggest not to separate them here in kind of attempts at trying to give it a rational understanding of what comes first, what's subordinate, and what is, let's say, of more importance. So it's just, if you want, you can simplify it for the sake of stuff. If you want to end up with some conceptual framework before all this is answered within yourself, as is the case in any case. And then you can think of it in terms of the relationship, again, that relationship of silence and dynamism, right? That silence and dynamism, as my teacher used to say. That Shiva, Shakti, that silent aspect and dynamic aspect. And in silence, as one would presume, there's no sound. It's just pure luminosity of silence. Pure luminosity of silence. It's indescribable. It's not light in a sense of how we experience that retinally or even internally. And dynamism is the frequency, from the subtlest to the grossest. So this, what I feel as reflecting on what you have shared. And yes, just definitely would encourage you to go back to your meditations and to give yourself fully to this, what is eager to unfold within your own self, for the sake of that self,